Hello, I'm Ross Stagnitti with Canal Town Commentary, a series of Canastota stories to be archived in the Education Center on Canal Street. Today is January 14th, 2015, and I'm at 214 Prospect Street, Canastota, in the home of Anne DeFrancisco. Anne, I would like to thank you for accepting my interview invitation.
You're very gracious about it.
And also thanks again to Ellen and Mark Dunbar, today's videographers. And recently we met with regard to this interview, and you were wondering why you were selected for this series. And my response was, you had a distinguished teaching career in Canastota that began in the late 1940s and ended in the early 1980s. And you've lived in Canastota for over 66 years. Surely you have some stories to tell.
I certainly do.
Thank you. But before sharing your Canastota stories, would you please tell us about the years before moving to our village? When and where were you born? And tell us a little bit about your parents, please.
I was born in Arizona. My father was a forest ranger. My mother was a teacher. She had one baby, and I was her second one while she was living in a little tiny one-room cabin up on the mountain where my father had to daily do his job. And it was difficult for her because she was a city gal, and she had no facilities, no running water. They had to carry all their water, and she had to, they had an outside privy and just one room, and they burned wood for heat and for cooking. So they stayed there 2 years. Then my father got a job in Maine. He was still working as a forest ranger, and he had an accident and injured his back. So we, from there, moved to Ithaca, New York, and that's where we lived next to a great uncle and his wife and family until we had a new home, and we built a new home right next door to the relatives.
I mentioned earlier that there's always been Mrs. DeFrancisco in my life, and I guess I assumed you were a native. Obviously you weren't. What was your maiden name?
My maiden name was Seely.
Okay, so you were Anne Seely. But again, I thought you were from one of the Italian-American families in Canastota. But
Well, I did have pitch black hair when I was young, but it got gray quickly.
You know, you mentioned you had an older sibling. Any other children in the family besides?
There are 7 children in my family. 5 were born between 27, until the 5th one was born in the late 30s. Mm-hmm. Then my mother went a gap for 10 years, and she had 2 more that were born when my older brother and I were in high school. And I didn't know she was expecting a baby. None of us knew. It was a complete surprise.
You mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, that your mother was your father's teacher?
Yes. My mother was taught high school in Belfast, New York, and her husband was one of her students.
Belfast, New York. Now, my wife always, she teases me because I always bring in the Boxing Hall of Fame, but Belfast, New York is the place where the old-fashioned bare-knuckle boxer John L. Sullivan once trained. Belfast, New York.
I didn't realize.
It's down in the southwestern corner of the state of New York.
I know my father was a great lover of boxing, and that we had boxers in Trumansburg that trained there.
And now, you went to the Ithaca area. Did you go to public school in the Ithaca
I
school
went to
system?
a private school the first few years because my mother taught at Cascadilla, which was a private school for foreign students who were learning English, and very small classes.
Which
And
school did you graduate from?
I graduated from Trumansburg. Well, my father started as an invalid because he couldn't work, started a mink farm. And we had a mink farm in Ithaca, and it grew to be too large to fit in with the zoning rules. So we moved to Trumansburg, and my father continued. He had the mink farm for 12 years, and he never made any money on it. It cost so much to keep them and feed them that the money he got for the pelts was. And I helped pelting with the pelting. So did my older brother.
Did you ever wear a mink coat?
No, I never cared for one. He wanted to know if I wanted a mink collar, and I said no thanks.
Okay.
I didn't like mink. They bite.
Right.
They're vicious.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, after high school, what were your postgraduate plans?
Well, my parents expected me to go to college, and I just never rebelled or anything. And I enrolled in Alfred and didn't know what I wanted to do. I was interested in music, and I was interested in biology. And I finally forgot about the music because I wasn't that talented and not that interested, and went into psychiatric, psychology, biology, and graduated in Bachelor of Arts.
Very good.
And didn't know what I was going to do.
That's typical.
Yeah. Well, I knew I had to do something to earn a living.
Right.
And a person from one of the colleges came, and they offered a state program called ITTP, Intensive Teacher Training. And for 5 years, you could go get your graduate degree in education. So I decided to do that. And there were 7 in my class. And I went to Geneseo and to Syracuse University and finished in 3 years instead of 5. But I would have had to go to night school and summer school.
Now, you mentioned biology and also psychology. Did you ever put any of the psychology to work in a job?
Yes, I did. I got a job at Willard State Hospital, a mental hospital for parents of people who were mentally ill. And I worked there 2 summers, and it was brutal work. The mistake was, the first day I got there, they took me through the hospital and showed me every kind of case they had. There were people in straitjackets. There were people who could have no furniture in their rooms and were under lock and key. And a lot of poor, miserable people. And my job was to interview some of the patients, meet with their families, and find out as much as I could and keep a history of them. Well, I went home with it. I just couldn't take it. I was so concerned about the people, and I thought I won't make a good worker in that field because I got too concerned about doing something for them. And so I quit that, and I worked for the Navy as a photographer for 2 years in between college. And I learned how to operate the camera. I learned how to develop film. I learned how to color film because they didn't have colored film in those days. And I could do all those things. And I lived on the base, right on the naval base. And one of my brothers was stationed there at the same time, so I could spend time with him.
You got your bachelor's from Alfred University?
Yes.
What year was that?
in 1948.
So,
And I got my degree for teaching in 1953.
okay. So you were teaching before you actually had the total certification?
Yeah,
Because you started in Canastota
they
in
were
48.
they were so desperate for teachers that even though I didn't have a teaching degree, they let me teach.
Right.
And the only job, I had 8 interviews that summer, the summer of 48.
Mhm.
And the only job offered me that was above a kindergarten or first grade was Canastota. They offered me a second grade. And I didn't feel qualified to start with first graders because I felt they needed very special and an experienced person. So I got the second grade position, and I was told to expect $2,300 for my first salary.
Mhm.
But Mr. Clifford said the minimum here is $2,100, and that's what you're going to be paid. And I said, I don't need to come here to teach. I said, I have other offers. So he finally agreed. Then the next year, he didn't want to give me a raise. But he did.
A little different from today with
Yeah,
union
yeah.
activities and whatever.
Yeah, oh,
Hey,
yeah.
You know, Mr. Clifford, Walter Clifford,
Walter Clifford.
that's the first superintendent's name that I recall from being in school.
Yeah.
How did he try to attract you here to Canastota other than relenting to $2,300?
Well, he gave me a wonderful picture of Canastota. He said the citizens are so concerned because there's a railroad that goes through the town.
Mhm.
They built 2 schools, one on the south side, one on the north side, so kids wouldn't have to cross the street.
Right.
Or some of them still did have to cross. But I pictured 2 beautiful schools. And when I got here, what a letdown. I had never seen the school before the week that school started. So I had no idea. Well, I went in that school and I said, the floors were oil treated. I said, this is a fire trap, I said to myself. But I took the job, and there was a school here on the corner, and I'd been in that, and that was even worse than the other one.
That was on the corner of Rasback and Prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you mentioned the railroad. That was a good 15 years or more before the overpass
Oh,
was
yes,
put in. So
yeah.
people did actually walk across the railroad tracks, whether they're going
Yeah.
north to south or
Yeah.
south to north.
But I could remember seeing kids trying to run across the tracks when the train was coming
Sure.
to see if they could beat it.
Sure. And cars. I
Yeah.
can remember
Oh, yeah.
cars that would, weave in.
Yeah.
They thought the train was far enough down the tracks, and
Well, when I finally got my license and was driving, I would go at a time when I knew there wouldn't be a whole lot of trains because you'd sit there and wait for quite a while. I'd go earlier rather than cross.
so you were hired to teach second grade in 1948. Which building?
It was the Spencer Street School.
So you were on the north side.
I was on the north side, yeah, and I lived on the north side with Mrs. Delano when I first came. When I arrived by bus, I had no idea where I would stay. I was told I was to meet with a Mrs. Preston, who was then the principal of the school.
Josie Preston?
Josie Preston.
I don't know that name
Oh.
personally, but someone mentioned it to me
Uh-huh.
recently.
Well, I was told just before I came that Josie Preston had had a nervous breakdown and was not going to be my principal. So I didn't know that either. So anyway, I got to town, got out of the bus, stood on the corner with my suitcase, and looked around. And there was one gentleman, I think his name was Whitfield, but I'm not sure. And he looked to me like someone who would be willing to help me. And I told him who I was. I was the new teacher coming to teach in Canastota. and I needed a place to stay. He said, "Do you know a place where I could stay?" "Oh, yes, I do." He said, "I know a woman that takes in teachers and other people, single people." He said, "I'll take you down there." So he took my suitcase, walked me down Peterborough Street, north, and introduced me to Mrs. Delano in that big house. And she said, "Yes, I have a room available for $5 a week. You can stay in that room." And it was a little tiny room, but she showed it to me, and I said, "Okay." So that's where I stayed my first year, most of my first year.
Now, Delano's is a famous historical name in Canastota. Was she related to?
It was her husband. He was out of the bank.
Okay.
I don't know what the name of the bank was, and there's a historical sign in front of the house.
Okay. Now, your future husband lived on North Peterborough Street. Was it somewhere in the vicinity?
Yes, it was about a block from there, a little over a block.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that Mrs. Delano had some rather strong feelings about Italian Americans.
Yes, she
in
did.
Canastota.
And she let it be known that I shouldn't date any Italian men or boys. And she said, "I'm sure you'll find someone that you can go with." So when I met Sam through a music teacher who was there, and she said, I'm dating him, and he's a nice person. Well, she was here just 7 weeks for practice teaching. And so she said, "Sam's a nice person." So he approached me, said, would I go out with him? And he picked me up at the corner when I came back from visiting my folks. And he already knew about me, but I didn't know him. So he said, "Let's go for a little ride." So we did. And he introduced himself. And I said, "Well, you were going with the music teacher." And he said, "Oh, that was just a temporary thing." So he started asking me out, and we dated for quite a while. But I said, "I'm not serious about him. He's too much of a playboy." He took me to Snell's in Syracuse, Snell's Dance Hall, it was called. And everybody was single that was there. And you just hoped you'd meet someone. Sam left me at the door, and he said, "Well, let's see how well you can make out. I'll pick you up at the end of the evening and take you home." And I thought, what kind of a guy is he? Well, he was just kidding, but boy, I was quite upset. But he did spend his time dancing.
You mentioned to me earlier that Mrs. Delano served breakfast. It was it sounded nutritious, but not very appetizing.
Yeah. Well, she said for 50 cents, I think, she served me breakfast. It was carrot juice every morning, carrot juice, and I think oatmeal every morning, and that was it. And coffee if I wanted it.
Did you end up having breakfast elsewhere?
Well,
maybe?
I finally decided that, and told her, and it kind of broke her heart, that I wouldn't drink her carrot juice. I found Spainer's restaurant that was in that main block, and he offered a breakfast for 75 cents. So I had breakfast there, and I ate lunch at the school, and we had a wonderful cook, Mrs. Finnicaro. And
Kate
yeah.
Finnicaro? She was the cafeteria lady when I was in high school at the Peterborough Street School.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the
she
meals
did
were
all the
excellent then
cooking.
too.
They didn't have to.
Right.
All those,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, Spainer's, if I'm not mistaken, that became Ethel's later on near
I think so.
where the municipal building is.
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Not far from the Weaver Hotel, the railroad tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also lived in another apartment. You mentioned.
I moved from Delano because she fussed about my going with an Italian.
Okay.
And she said, "Does your mother know that?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "But I'm not serious about it." So I made friends with a girl who worked at Oneida Limited.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, let's rent a small apartment together. And I said, fine. So Mrs. Shep rented a little apartment next to the Three Pines, a cellar apartment, one room, little bathroom, a little kitchenette. And there we stayed for a while, but that didn't work out too well.
That building's still there and still is rental property, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. They had no trouble renting it.
Yeah. Obviously, Mrs. Delano's sentiments about Italian Americans didn't deter you from a courtship with Sam.
No.
And what was your father's reaction to your dating? Oh, he was not.
Yeah, not, no.
Because Sam was
He said-
Italian Catholic, and your dad was.
Yeah. Well, he was supposedly a Protestant, but I don't think he ever went to church.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But he didn't want me marrying a Catholic.
What ethnic background? Steely sounds English or Irish?
Irish, very Irish.
Okay.
Yeah, but not Catholic Irish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that Sam's family and friends accepted you, and his friends had a description for you.
Yes, they did. Yeah, I was the American girl that married Sam, and Joe, Sirio, and all that bunch. Peter Ippolito, called me the girl that married the American girl that married Sam.
And if I'm not mistaken, back then, for Italian Americans, anyone who was not was considered, and this was their pronunciation of American. It was a mitigan. You were a mitigan, but you were the mitigan that married Sam.
Yeah.
The DeFrancisco home was on North Peterborough Street, 325, I believe. I did a little research, and his parents were Giuseppe and Isadora.
Yes.
They were immigrants from Sicily. His dad worked for the railroad.
Yes.
And also had 10
had the muck.
had 10 acres of muck land on Warner's Road, which was then considered Onion Town.
Onion Town. Yes.
And I have wondered if you ever worked on the muck. You ever?
Well, I learned later that Sam's family had muck, and Sam told me about how busy it kept him, and his sisters often thought he tried to sneak away to find excuses so he could go to town or do something with the boys. But I said, that's interesting. And I said, I'd like to go down there and I would like to work the muck. Try it. So he said, well, we have to weed onions this week. So I said, oh, I've done a lot of weeding. I can take care of that. So I got dressed to go down. It was a very hot day. I wore a sleeveless blouse, shorts, sneakers, no hat. And I went down and I said, I'm going to get a nice tan today. I lasted a half a day. I got so burned. I was sick. And that muck is so hot. And Sam's sister kept saying, I told you, you should have dressed with long pants, long sleeves, a big hat. So I went the half day, and then I went a few times after that, but I learned how to dress. But oh, that was painful. But you didn't tell me I was going to get a tan.
You learned the hard way. Let's go back to the start of your Canastota teaching career. During the second semester of your first year, which was 1948-49, you experienced a scary situation. It was a major fire at the Chapel Street School. But the Chapel Street School was connected to the Spencer Street School where you were teaching by a tunnel, an underground passageway. And I did a little research with a V Journal. It was only 60 feet separated the two buildings. The date was March 3rd, 1949. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I remember first hearing the fire siren. And then our principal said, we have to vacate the building because the building next door is on fire and the smoke is going through the tunnel. So he said, get your children together and get outside. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a very cold day. I complained from the beginning that they gave me a second grade on the second floor because those kids had to manage those stairs. But I got them all out, but most of them didn't take time to get their coats because mm-hmm. they were in a separate area. So I said, those kids can't stay out there in the cold. So I made 2 trips back, and the fireman tried to stop me in the second trip. He said, that building isn't safe. And I said, my kids aren't protected either against the cold. And as far as I knew, there were no regulations or any practice drills mm-hmm. for a fire. They weren't prepared for a fire. Right. And the kids scattered, some that lived in town, and they made the rest stay, and I think they took them home on a bus.
Right. Yeah, the Bee Journal that came out the following day on March 4th mentioned some names that that I can relate to. Several were my teachers later on. And to quote the Bee Journal, it said, the level-headed acting principal, Larry Waldo. I didn't realize he was an acting principal at the time.
Yeah.
And it mentioned the faculty. Mm-hmm. And there was a 6th grade teacher in particular who was singled out.
Bob Fortier mm-hmm. was a new teacher there. He was young. And he had sense enough to gather as many records as he could mm-hmm. and got them out.
Right. And it mentioned that the faculty did a great job in keeping things under control and making sure the kids used the handrail so that they wouldn't trip because there was a lot of smoke in the building. There were some other names that I came across. Genevieve Lamp was a 7th grade teacher at Chapel Street. Yeah. Pearl Bush and Genevieve Cali were in the 8th grade. Mm-hmm. They mentioned, this name for some reason sounds familiar to me, Ruth Cooper.
Ruth Cooper was head of the little store down in the basement, mm-hmm. and she was there where the fire started.
So that's where it began, in the basement. Mm-hmm. And they also mentioned a janitor who I can recall when I was in high school, Louis Neer.
Oh yeah.
Apparently he was one of those that mm-hmm. that discovered the fire as well. Mm-hmm. You have, I don't know if we want to get close up of this or not, but this is a photo of the Chapel Street School, and the facade is still standing, but it was gutted. It was a total loss, and on the back of the photo it says, the remaining wall of the Canastota School building, which burned on March 3rd, 1949. And the Bee Journal had a photo which showed the Chapel Street building and firefighters that were on the front lawn. And what do you recall about the firemen that day?
Well, they were very efficient, mm-hmm. and they got there in a hurry, and they really handled it well. But I was so concerned about my students that that was my focus at the time.
So you went back into your building wasn't burning, correct?
No, but it was filled with smoke because they had not. I don't know if there was a way of shutting it off mm-hmm. between the 2 buildings. Right.
You know, in an earlier interview, I mentioned this to Chuck Segroy because he was in 6th grade at the time. He was in the Chapel Street building, and he went back into his building to get his coat and hat, but that building was on fire. Yeah. And he said that Pearl Bush, she was just beside herself, but he was able to retrieve his hat and his coat that day.
Well, I was very friendly with Millie Lehner, mm-hmm. who was the youngest teacher there. Okay. And she told me afterwards that they had had several fire drills 2 or 3 days in a row mm-hmm. because it was Fire Safety Week or something. And so that day, the fire siren went off, mm-hmm. And the kids started to get up, and she said, "Sit down." She said, "Just another practice." And the kids said, "There's smoke coming up through the
ventilators?
ventilator." And she said, "Oh," and then the announcement came. Of course, they had there was no sound system to tell someone had to go to each classroom and say, "Clear out, the building's on fire."
So it was kind of prophetic when you said, when you came to Canastota for the first time and took a tour of the buildings, that back then, this was a year before, almost a year before the fire, that you thought it was a fire trap.
Yep. And it also, when they showed me my room, I had nothing but an old teacher's desk and these student desks. They were all fastened to the floor.
Right.
Even the chairs were. They were those half seat things.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm not that kind of a teacher. I want seats that move, and
Right.
so I can group them together. So that was didn't go over with me, and they left me no materials. I didn't have a book. I didn't have anything the students could use. So the first day they came, I went all the way around the room, and I had a big class. And they told me their names, and I said, "Well, tomorrow when you come, bring a pencil and paper, at least, and we'll find something to do." And I said, "Bring a lunch if you need, if you can't go home for lunch." And I said, "Wear the same outfit, sit in the same seat, and I might know who you are." So they did. They were very good. But I had to depend on an aide, Jessie DeFrancisco, who is my aide.
Sure.
Yeah. She dug up a few things and brought them into me. I went to the library, got acquainted with Helen Sheridan, the library, and she got me books and a lot of things. And that's how I started off. That's how I started off. And it's a good thing the kids were good, because I wasn't a bit pleased. And then I looked at all the teachers, and they looked like my mother. They were in their 40s and 50s.
Right.
They weren't young. And I thought, what am I doing at 21 years old with all these people? And they were very suspicious of me. They'd peek in my classroom, and they thought kids were too noisy.
Yeah, you were the
rookie.
I
I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. But we got along after that. But my first impressions were very, very different.
Now, did they have a problem with you going back into the Spencer Street School twice to retrieve coats and hats, or?
No, they didn't. They were concerned about their own. Yeah.
Now, the Chapel Street building was a total loss, and the Bee Journal mentioned that the Methodist Church offered its facilities, they housed some students, and the library, and the high school apparently had some of the junior high kids that split sessions. Now, the building that you were teaching in Spencer Street, the heating system was in the Chapel Street building and apparently went through that underground passageway to heat your building as well. How long was Spencer Street shut down because of the fire next door?
Well, I know I taught at least 1 year in that building afterwards, and I'm not quite sure, maybe it was 2.
Right. And if memory serves me right, I started kindergarten at the library, and then I went to the new South Side School, which would have been early 50s, and then when I was in first grade, I went to Robert Street. So I'm assuming that after Spencer Street was no longer the school, you went to Robert Street to teach.
Yes, yeah.
How many years were you there?
At Robert Street, most of those years, from 56 on. But for a while I was at Peterborough Street, but I'm not sure just when that occurred.
That would have been after 65. I was in the last class that graduated from Peterborough Street as a high school, so it would have had to have been sometime after 65, and I don't know how much renovation they had to do or
I'm
conversion.
not quite clear on that, but I know they closed off that open space in the middle.
Yes.
and provided more classroom.
right. You
And
got a
that's where I
balcony
got
and-
locked in my room.
Oh.
It was in that Peterborough Street School.
Yeah.
Again, they gave me a room upstairs
Oh, wow.
with little ones. But then I had fourth graders after that.
Now, you've lived on the south side here since the early 50s. Did you ever teach at either
I never taught at the South Side School.
neither the old nor the current
No.
south side schools?
No, neither one.
Yeah. When you were in your early years of teaching, did you teach all courses? Was it a self-contained?
Everything.
Mhm.
Yes, it was self-contained for many years.
Right.
Yeah.
And then did you team teach later on?
Not till the end of my teaching career.
Mm-hmm.
We went into team teaching.
Which
One
courses?
year,
Uh-huh.
one year I had a group of fourth graders that were so good, and I felt I knew them so well, that I asked the principal if I could keep them for fifth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents agreed that they had to get their approval. And I had a ball those 2 years.
You were ahead of your time because they call that looping now.
Yeah.
In some
yeah,
schools, they
Yeah.
let teachers
Yeah,
do
just
back
one
to back.
parent
Mhm.
didn't want her child
Hmm.
in my classroom. But that was fun.
Very good. You have a lot of class pictures, and this one in particular that you had shown me earlier.
That was in
This was in Spencer Street?
Spencer Street School,
And I noticed Leonard Argentine,
right?
who's now a doctor,
Yeah.
Nikki Facillo,
Uh-huh.
Ronnie Bruno,
Right. Maurice Facina,
Maurice Frazina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lucarelli, I'm
Mhm.
not sure what, and Cervello.
Mm-hmm. So these kids were about 5 years ahead
was
of me, I believe,
Uh-huh.
because
That
I
was
think
the
this is the
fourth
class
grade.
of 1960, if I'm not mistaken. And I noticed that familiar face. My wife's cousin, a Clark who lived on Elm Street. I don't know if that's Donnie or one of the other brothers, but
Yeah.
that's quite a
This
photo.
was the Cesario,
Mhm.
good-looking kid.
Right. So, very interesting. And in fact,
I think it's
This-
a date on that one.
the 63-64, and this caught my eye because that's my brother.
Oh, right.
So
Right,
I never had
yeah.
you as a teacher, but my brother did.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if my sister would have been the year before, but yeah, my brother was in that class that particular year. Now, you retired in what year?
In 82.
Okay, so you 34 years.
Yeah, going on 34 years I've been retired.
Now, there was one story that I was most amused by, and it was with regard to a snake. Could you share with us that story of the snake at Peterborough
right.
Street?
I was at Peterborough Street again on the second floor where I didn't want to have little ones. And Dave Hastings was then the music teacher, and we were on very good terms. And he would often bring me samples of science things because I was teaching quite a bit of science at that time. And I was assigned that room and knew from the beginning that it would sometimes lock automatically from the outside, and I couldn't get in and I couldn't get out. I don't know just what was wrong. I reported it to the office because I thought that was pretty important before I got a class in there. And they made a note of it. And I was in the second day of school. They assigned a student teacher to me who was going to be there for 7 or 8 weeks. So here I am in the classroom, and the kids were in there, and they understood about the door, that it would lock. So I put an board eraser in the door, and the kids knew about it, and they were very careful, made sure it was in there. In came Dave Hastings with a jar. In the jar was a snake in some grass and soil. And he said, I brought you a science thing. And I said, oh, thank you. And the kids all said, And we chatted a few minutes, and he set it on my desk. And he said, well, have fun with the snake. He breezed out the door. The eraser went flying out, and the door slammed. And I thought, I wonder if we can get out. I went over and tried it, no. And the kids all said, the eraser's gone, we're locked in here. And I said, well, you're all bright kids. Let's see if you can figure out a way to get out of this situation. So they had all kinds of ideas. Well, we can jump out. I said, not 2 stories. Not 2 stories, it's too far. Well, we can tie our jackets together and make a rope. We can yell up. And they just had all kinds of ideas. And most of the kids weren't perturbed over it at all. And I thought, Anne, stay calm. And the girl, fortunately, the assistant teacher was very calm. So I set 2 kids up near the windows on the side of the driveway that went into the school. And I said, if you see anyone, yell to go to the office and open my door. Open the door. We're in trouble. One little girl went by, and the kid yelled, we need help. Go to the office. And she said, huh? And kept on going. So that was the end of that. We pounded on the wall to the teacher next door. It was chaos. And afterwards I said, how come you didn't come? She said, I thought you were playing some silly game with the kids. So finally, we were in, one kid said, how are we going to get lunch? They won't miss us probably. And I said, yes, they'll miss us. I said, we won't be in that long. A teacher came who was the librarian to sign me up to a time that we could go. And I said, we're locked in. Of course, they had no sound system then. When you're in your room, you're completely isolated. So she went to the office. Well, at the time, Mr. Corolla was the principal. He was so upset. He said, that should never have been. I said, I reported it. They knew about it. So he had a guy come immediately. They took the door off. They put a new lock in it, put the door back on. And we were safe. But it was quite an adventure.
Oh, goodness. I can relate to that a little bit. I had a student, I taught for 25 years in what were called temporaries. They were supposed to build additional classrooms.
Like Quonset huts?
Well, they were like double-wide trailers.
Oh.
And there was a building program that got wrapped up in the courts and whatever. So we were there for 25 years, and we were right by the athletic fields. And one day before class started, a boy who'd been out in the field brought in a snake, and he thought that maybe he would, get one of his female friends really upset with it. So he coiled it around. I was busy with some students, and I didn't realize what he was doing. He coiled it around the leg of a chair, and she came in and sat down, and she looked down, she noticed it, didn't panic a bit, she picked it up, she had it crawl up her arm, and he had that look on his face like, didn't work. Oh, goodness.
I've never been afraid of snakes or most animals because I was brought up with the mink.
Right.
But I took the kids on a field trip to Sherburne Preservative, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all kinds of animals and things. But the guy said, you're not afraid of animals? And I said, no. And he brought out this snake. And he said, let's show your teacher, your teacher can be brave. Mm-hmm. He put it on the back of my neck, and the head was here, and the tail was out here. So here I was. He said, just stand there calmly. The snake won't do a thing. And my kids were all going, you know. And he left it on me just a minute or two. And I was a little leery, but he took it off, and I survived.
It's a good way to impress your students.
But, yeah.
Your husband Sam, besides farming, was he involved in any other occupation?
Well, he had his own auto repair thing, and thought he could make a business of it, but it was not.
In Canastota?
In Canastota, yeah, right on that street, side street. And so he went to work for Mr. Hall in Hall's Express, and he worked there until he retired in the 80s.
Very good. And your children, now during those years you were teaching and having children and the early years of their lives, did you get any assistance?
My mother-in-law, who was a wonderful woman, and she defended me every time she thought my husband did something wrong, took care of all 3 babies. I took a year off for each one so I could enjoy that part of it. And she took care of them till they went to school.
Right.
Yeah.
You have 3 children. Tell us about your oldest son, Joseph.
Joseph is a rebel. And he was in school at the time when he thought that he would escape the draft, go to Canada if need be. And he was willing to do anything and gave the school a hard time. He was, for example, he thought that any English word that had a silent letter, you shouldn't have to spell it. So before was B-E-F-O-R and things like that. He was going to change the spelling system, and he was going to do all these things. And he was...
But that was a sign of the times.
Yeah,
that was my...
Yeah.
I say my brother's generation. He's not that much younger than I am, but there was definitely a difference in attitude at that time. Early 70s, I think.
But he got acquainted with Anthony, somebody or other, and they did mountain climbing and scaling and that sort of thing. They really got into it, had all the equipment. And Joseph was married to Sylvia at the time, and she was one of his students. Or he was one of her students, rather. And they went to Pratt's Falls, I think, and were going to climb. They didn't bring all their equipment, but they were going to climb anyway. So the 2 of them got all the way up to the top. Anthony started down and got down all right. Joseph slipped on a rock that had moss, and he went the full distance, landed on the back of his head and his body. And it took 2 hours to get an ambulance there and to get him out of there, because he was way down in the gully. And he was mincemeat. We went to visit him at the hospital. He had to sit or lie in the hallway because they didn't have a room for him. And there was a doctor there that had just taken care of some accident victims. So he took care of Joseph, but Joseph smashed the whole back of his head. They had to remove the bone. He was 4 hours. But that taught him a lesson. Well, he became very concerned after that, and he became a medic, and took the courses, and he became very concerned about people that were injured. But he survived.
Well, coincidentally, his name was brought up this morning.
Oh?
I was downtown, and the fire alarm went off. Fire truck goes down Center Street, and for some reason, maybe because my sister-in-law's furnace had gone out, I thought just maybe, it may be related to that. And sure enough, there was a minor fire at her house, and she came over to our place later in the morning today, and she mentioned your son
Oh.
and sang his praises because he's the Madison County fire coordinator.
Yeah, and he takes that job very seriously. Yeah, he also teaches fire training on all of New York State. He went to New York City when the bomb hit, or when the plane hit the
9/11.
building. He helped with that.
And I've heard a lot of nice things about Joe.
But he's a worker.
Now your daughter Janet is married, Janet Callahan.
She's divorced.
She's divorced, but she, in fact,
She has 2 children.
Janet was featured in the Post-Standard
Yes.
early last year, I believe. Interesting photo. And it says, I grew up in a Canastota neighborhood with a lot of children. I was always the one who organized activities and events and herded people into doing things. She said, one I specifically remember, you could send away to one of the local TV stations and get a kid to have a carnival to raise money for muscular dystrophy research. And she said, I did it every year and either coerced or cajoled every kid in the neighborhood into running a game or selling tickets.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and she earned her way through college by selling to parents of students a birthday thing. She'd furnish the cake and make all the arrangements, the balloons and everything. And she made enough money to pay her way through college. And she made it through in 3 years, her undergraduate.
And if I'm not mistaken, she was kind of a pioneer, right? She was, I think, the first female managing partner for that law firm. And that law firm's been around for, I think, over 125 years.
Yeah. And now she's the whole shebang. She's the head of the whole firm.
It was an interesting article. And you have one other child who I wasn't familiar with. I was gone before he...
Yeah, my Paul. I didn't have a decent picture of him. And I went through his wedding pictures, and I cut off the wife, and I so now I've got pictures of him alone.
But he's involved with public service too.
Yes.
You said he works in the New York State Senate in Albany.
Yes, and he has it'll be 23 years that he's worked there. He graduated from Marist College.
Oh, very good, very good. Any grandchildren besides the you mentioned?
No, just the 2.
The 2 are Janet's.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't teach my children something they should have to get grandchildren. But
Now, this lovely house that we're sitting in was built, I'm going to guess, in the 50s?
Yes, yeah. We started in 54. 54. And it took us about 3 years. And he had help. The youngest Merrill son, who worked for the Ellis lumber company, helped him with the basic construction. And then Joe Lupica, the mason, came and helped him lay the foundation. He had more people come and get him started because he didn't know that much about building.
Now, were you involved at all in
Oh
any of the
yes,
construction?
I learned. I didn't do much with the foundation, but I learned how to put up wallboard, finish the seams. I helped hold those up. I was here quite a bit, and I did much of the painting. I painted the outside of the.
So you had more success with the home construction than you did working on the muck land?
Yes, much more, much more. And he gave up the muck long ago. Yeah, they sold not too long after we were married.
One thing I remember about this neighborhood, this is Prospect Street, and there's Rasback and Route 5 and High Street, kind of in your backyard here, it was a rather interesting neighborhood,
It was like a neighborhood, a real neighborhood. And Sam used to flood our backyard, and the kids would come over and skate. And Ed Marchetti and John Pacciano were initial in getting people together. So we were always having parties, group parties.
And they were local businessmen, right? John Chano had a men's shop downtown.
And she
the
had a shop too.
Oh, that's A&M Argentine, right? The Argentine's dress
Yes.
store.
Mm-hmm.
And Marchetti's were involved with the Canastota Fruit Market. He was a meat cutter.
Yeah.
And if you ever asked if there was a doctor in the house, you had a couple of doctors in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Dr. Sullivan used to come right to the house. He'd come up the stairs. So did Dr. Nicotri.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came over. And when we had Superintendent Hamity here, he lived on the corner. And of course, he got right in with them. All the men in the neighborhood had the dart game. You know what I mean?
No.
Well, there's a dart game where you throw the darts and they have to land in a certain area in the target. And they had a regular club. They'd meet.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. They're outlawed today because they're dangerous. But they used to have their parties, and the wives would make pizza and different things, bring them food, and they had their drinks, and there was a whole group of them. I think there were 8 in the club, the men.
Now, there were a couple of other superintendents of schools that
Yeah.
lived in this neighborhood.
Yeah, Mr. Savolos was here, Dr. Nicotri, or Riel. Riel, yeah. Yeah, we had doctors and lawyers and superintendents.
Right, attorneys.
I couldn't get away with it.
Mike Peretta was practically across the street. You had Sebastian Patney up the street, Ross Patney over on High Street. And, you know, it just was a very interesting neighborhood. I mean, the Muck farmers, John and Rosina Patney, still live in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Sam Joffrey lived here for many years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the other the Bruno families were around the corner. So it was quite an interesting neighborhood. And you've been involved with volunteer organizations throughout your years in Canastota.
Yes.
When did that begin?
It began the first year I got here. They asked me to take a Girl Scout troop, and I did with Mrs. Shep and Anne Pollard. She was related to Susina Aquino somehow, and I enjoyed those. And I had junior high girls, and I have a picture of them someplace, but I couldn't find it. But I had a Shep girl, and I had a Levanter girl, and I had Dr. Cuthbert's daughter, and a real active group.
What kind of activities were you involved?
Well, we started first with a Danish Girl Scout leader came here and gave a course on camping, and the kids wanted to do it. So we took camping, and it was rough camping. You had to dig a latrine. You had to cook with sticks. You couldn't use pots or pans or anything. We went on a camp out to test this, and the girls were good. Were very good at it. But it rained almost the whole week that we were gone, and the parents were very cooperative. And they said to me, one of the parents called me and said, "Don't bring your morning drink, because we're gonna have, you know, everything for breakfast."
Right.
They didn't have coffee. They drank tea. And I drink coffee. Nobody brought coffee. I didn't have my own. But I drank tea and didn't like it. But and then I taught a little ceramic course to them. And my husband made me an electric throwing wheel. So they learned how to throw the clay to make a pot, and I taught that. So, but they were older girls and would do anything. I had the Grilly girls, Joanna Grilly and Mary. Oh, they were full of it. They took a shortcut through a field when we were camping, and there was a bull in there. And the minute they said bull, I was scared. They weren't.
Snakes are one thing, but a bull's
I said,
something
I'm going
else.
for that fence and jumping as quick as I can, and they did follow me. But
What activities are you involved in now?
Well, now I was in Dollars for Scholars,
Mhm.
and I still am in that. And then I'm in the Opportunity
Mhm.
Shop, and I count money at church. I've
Mhm.
done that for years. And I was PTA, of course, for years
Mhm.
for that. And I work at the Office of the Aging.
Very good. Very good. Well, Anne, you've been a wonderful role model for so many students and your own children, as evidenced by their public service. And I want to thank you for all you've done and you continue to do with all of your volunteer work.
Oh, I also did volunteer work at school, mentoring with kids 12 years after for 12 years after I
Wow.
retired.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I privately taught Ross Stagnitti's daughter
Mhm.
1 year, Janet,
Right.
because she had ileitis and
Mhm.
was very ill.
Right.
And I did quite a bit of that. But I had a lot of wonderful students.
Well, thank you very much.
Canastota's been very good to me.
And you've been very good to Canastota.
And I learned some swear words in Italian. And we were at a party, and I used some expression that Sam often used. And Sam looked at me and he said, "Don't ever say that." And I said, "Well, your mother said it. Anything your mother said." He said, "Well, you watch what you say."
I can relate because there were some words that I picked up, and if I said them wrong, my grandmother, she reacted. I didn't realize why until it was too
Well,
late.
I didn't realize what I was saying.
Right.
I thought it was something, joyful Mary, something that you say to polite society. But,
How many class photos have you uncovered? I know that you were determined to get as many.
yeah, well, some I loaned out and people didn't give back to me, but I think I have 21.
Oh, wow.
And I taught for 35 years, so I'm lacking some.
Very good. Yeah. Very nice.
And I said, I'll never forget a student, but when you have that many and teach that many years,
Yeah.
you don't remember all of them.
I counted up over 3,000 students I had. I generally don't forget faces any longer, but names, they kind of run together.
It's easier for me to remember these students than it is some of the most recent ones I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that often, and it's true for myself.
Mhm.
The last 10 years, there were so many family names that were similar, and some of even the first names were repeated. It was tough keeping track of who was who.
I had one of the Queen twins, 2 girls, and one morning they decided that they would change places. And they looked so near alike, I couldn't tell. So anyway, I got going that morning, and things were going along fine. I was teaching a small group, reading. And this little girl, Queen girl, got up, went to the pencil sharpener, and ground away, was doing all kinds of things. And I said, during reading group in my room, you're supposed to stay in your seat until I'm through with the group. And she looked at me as if to say, well. And then I discovered it. The teacher who had the other one, the one that was from my room, discovered it right away, but I didn't. And the kid said, couldn't you figure that out? I said, when she got up and started.
Oh, wow. Well, how long do we go on here?
Too long.
No, it's the longer the better.
Oh.
Because that means that, you got interesting stories to tell.
Oh.
I'm always afraid that, I'm going to run out of material, so to speak, and it's going to take 10 minutes or so. But this was very nice.
I had so many cooperative parents. I had this weather unit, and there were little things they could do to make weather instruments. Well, one was a wind gauge, and you had to go with your arm out of a moving car with this gadget and figure out. This father took this little boy, his son, outside in his car, and they did all the things to get this wind gauge calibrated. And then I had another student whose father brought this small tank that was a liquid battery, open battery. I was kind of fearful of that because it had, but I had a lot of parents who brought me spaghetti sauce. Sam would say, "Tell them you want pizza." But I had an awful lot of parents brought food and sauce.
I was kind of the reverse because I taught all of my career in a rural school in Oswego County in Sandy Creek, and Italian Americans were a rarity up there. But I had the same experience. I mean, I was accepted, I think, by most people, maybe not by everyone, but you know, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, it was just wonderful. You know, I still have many of my best friends are still up in the North Country.
When I first started teaching, I was told from the college that it would be nice if I went and visited some of the parents, you know, that I had the first year. So I went to visit Tony Tornatore's parents. And the mother came to, I had called her and made the arrangement. I said, "I'm coming to visit you." She said, "What did my son do?" She thought I was coming to
He was in trouble.
He was in trouble. And she'd bake me a pie.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and I had a father come once, and I was for the orientation. And I said, "Your son has a difficulty concentrating. He can't, his attention span is so short." And I gave him little suggestions of things that he could do. He said, "There's nothing wrong with my son. He'll sit 2 hours in front of television." Never moved.
Oh, wow. I'm going to ask a favor.
Yes.
You're the fourth interview. I've only done 4 of these.
Oh,
And I always
ask
ask the professionals here to use my unprofessional camera to take a picture. So if you wouldn't mind.
I meant to call you because I'd like to see pictures of your children.
Oh, well, you know something? I'm going to write that down, and I'll bring some to church on. We missed church last week. We went Saturday. I didn't skip church last week. We went Saturday night, but I'll bring some photos. We have our youngest granddaughter. She's only 2. She'll be 2 in another week or so. She's with us on Tuesdays and Thursdays because Mom and Dad both work, and sometimes they're out of town. So she's with us a couple of days a week. She's a real sketch.
Now, you had children?
No.
No.
That's why they look so young. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never going to get married. And Sam talked me into it.
I never really
But-
thought about it much either.
Oh,
Sometimes
our
it
daddy
happens.
was crazy. One evening, he made a date with me, and he was going to take me down to the beach.
Oh, yeah.
So I dressed up.
When it was really, that was hot.
I had some fancy black sandals, high heel sandals. It was summery. It was late spring, before my summer of leaving. And I had this brand new suit on, fancy green suit, and I paid a lot for it. And he said, he parked along the canal, and he said, "Let's walk the
pier?
The pier."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Fine." So we started to walk, and we got to the point at the end where the concrete, then there's rocks beyond there.
Right.
So he said, "Would you like to walk on the rocks?" And I said, "Sure." So he took my hand, and we were walking carefully along. Well, all of a sudden, I stepped on a rock. The moon was shining, so you couldn't see. I stepped on a rock that had moss on it, and I went into the canal. And I didn't let go of him. I thought, if I'm going in, he's going to go too. So I pulled him in with And there the two of us were in the canal. It ripped my suit. I ruined my shoes. That's the kind of date we had. And he also gave me my first driving lesson, and it was down at the beach. You're going to drive down to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never done any driving except a little bit on the street just to practice. So I got down to the beach fine. Got into Silver Beach, right into the busy area, and there were lots and lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want you to drive straight here, turn left. Turn left, yeah. I had to make 2 turns and pull over in front of Stewart's, in front of
Eddie's?
Yeah, Eddie's. I made the 3 turns, the straight and the 2 turns, but I didn't brake soon enough, and I hit a state trooper. And the state trooper was in Eddie's. Well, Sam got out and smashed and he had a brand new convertible, brand new car, had the top down. It smashed his grill, but didn't do a thing to the state trooper's car.
Mm-hmm.
People gathered. Look what you did! Of course, I made it all these people were looking at it. I was crying. Sam said, that's all right. I'll fix it. He never told his parents. The state trooper didn't do anything. Didn't give me a ticket or anything. He was a friend of Sam's, I guess. In those days, you could get away with it. He put the car in the garage that he was working in at the time and fixed it. I didn't realize. I knew he was going to fix it. I opened my big mouth at Sunday dinner at his mother's, said something about the day I wrecked Sam's car. You wrecked Sam's car? Sam had never told her.
Oh, goodness.
And he never gave me another lesson. I took driver's training from school from Jerry Green. I said, you told me to do 3 things at once. I can't multitask.
Well, this has been fun.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Loads of fun.
This has been very good. Very
And
good.
you're wonderful, you 2 people that do that. Where did you learn and how did you learn?
I learned at college. It was my part-time job at college. I worked in there.
Where did you go?
Lemoyne.
Where?
Lemoyne.
Oh.
So I was in the audiovisual department. So I learned all the equipment and stuff like that. So.
Well, when I got my job in the photography, when I worked at the Navy, I wasn't a member of the Navy. I didn't know a thing about cameras. And so the first few, the guy in charge showed me how to poise people and how to work the camera and everything. All the pictures came back with the heads turned the wrong way. and so he had to do them all over again. So he gave me another lesson. And so I turned out pretty good pictures. And then the development, I didn't stick with very long. And then I did the coloring the rest of the time and taking orders. But that coloring was so easy in those days. You just put this oil with cotton on over the whole thing. And then, of course, you had to take the color of the person's eyes and hair. And so you took brown and put a little brown in the eyes, a little brown on the hair. And it probably took, we do 3 at a time. Usually people ordered 3 pictures. And it took maybe 5 minutes to color 3 pictures, unless they were very fussy. Then you had to spend a little more time, a little rouge on the cheek.
They did our family portrait, which is in our living room. Unbelievable. Yeah, photography is an art.
Yes, it is.
A lot of people think it's not. I know because most of my photos are terrible. But it's they did a great job. I mean, everybody raved when they come to the house. Whoa, who took that?
It's quite an art to it.
Yeah.